Joining me now is Alan Cohn. He is a great investigative reporter, now running for Congress. And I have to confess that Alan and I worked together in Miami, but unlike me, he's actually a fantastic reporter. And in 2007, for example, he won the Peabody Award, and it was actually for a story he did on defective parts in Black Hawk helicopters, so holding the government accountable. So that's relevant to his run here. Alan, great to have you back on the show.
Oh, it's so good to talk to you, Cenk.
All right, so Alan, you've been a reporter for a long time, won about every award you can in that field. So you're going and trying to run for office one more time. You've done it before. Why? What's the draw here? Why leave something you're really great at and try to run for office?
You know, for the last 3.5 years, I had my own show on ABC 7 in our area, the Tampa Bay area, and every night we talked about what's happening in Washington, what's happening with the economy, the environment, taxes, health insurance, and all of that. But I'm tired of talking about things because nothing seems to change in Washington, D.C. And in this particular era, we have a freshman Republican congressman who just days after he was elected, it came out that he acknowledged he took illegal campaign loans. So now he's under federal investigation by the FEC and basically rendered ineffective, you know, at a very time when we need a representative in Washington. This is a really middle class area. And, you know, I don't have to tell you that, you know, for all the talk that the president makes about the economy and how low unemployment it is, I don't know what the economy he's talking about here, because middle class families in this area are not getting ahead. They're falling behind. They're working harder. Many make less money than they did 10 years ago. 60% of people haven't recovered from the economic collapse. 40% live paycheck to paycheck. And, you know, I have a wife and 2 kids, and we know exactly what is happening with middle class families. And, you know, darn it, you know, we need somebody to go to Washington and focus like a laser beam on that. And I don't think you hear that too much from members of Congress or candidates for Congress for that matter.
Right. Well, you know, look, Alan, in a lot of ways, you sound like most of the candidates that I speak to, which is, I can't take it anymore. And if they're not gonna do anything about it, I'm gonna do something about it. And so that's refreshing to hear. Before we get more into your planks, I'm curious, because I'm always curious about the issue of corruption. What did the Republican incumbent do? What was he charged with that's already got him in legal trouble?
He took almost $200,000 in loans from friends to run his campaign 2 years ago, evidently because he was having a hard time raising money the old-fashioned way, which you have to do in terms of calling and asking people for his support. That's he's acknowledged that. It is against the law. The Federal Elections Commission is investigating that as we speak, but as you know, the FEC is so wrapped up in the fact that so many of its commissioners are quitting, they don't have a quorum. This investigation is gonna take a long time. And as a result of this, though, his name is Ross Spano, and he's gotten a lot of flack from fellow Republicans in this area because of that. Because at the time that, as I said, we need somebody the most in Washington, he's so wrapped up in this investigation that he can't get much done about anything.
Alan, do you know what percentage of the time Spano votes with Trump?
Well, it's over 90%. 95%.
Yeah.
He is Trump's man in this area. And you have to keep in mind, number one, the demographics of this congressional district, which has become progressively more Democrat over the years because of redistricting. But it's also just very working class. And, you know, when I talk about the economy, you know, maybe a lot of candidates do, but, you know, for all the things that are happening in Washington these days, there are so many families right now who are struggling just to make ends meet that all the other issues get drowned out because of that monthly difficulty in just paying the bills. And, you know, people won't be able to focus on all these other things that are important while they're under so much duress in terms of just paying for the mortgage and their health insurance and their kids' Little League for that matter.
Yeah, well, Spano helped by giving billionaires tax cuts. Oh, right, that didn't help at all. So
Hey, you know what, Jake? Let me stop you there because they boast about those tax cuts, and if you remember, the budget deficit was going down to something that could have been actually balanced at one point, like when President Obama left office, and we exploded the budget deficit because of these tax cuts. And I dare anybody watching this right now to tell you how those tax cuts changed their lives. They can't, because Lord knows nobody likes to pay taxes, but if there's anybody who deserves a tax cut, it is the middle class families and working families that need them the most, not the upper 1% who are doing just fine. And don't get me wrong, I want people to start businesses and make a lot of money. And I know those people want to pay their employees well and provide health insurance and have safe workplaces and not pollute the environment. But too often it's the middle class that gets the shaft, and that continues to this day, thanks to Ross Spano.
So let's talk about how you would get it done. So you're talking about delivering for the middle class, and that makes a ton of sense. I think a lot of politicians have forgotten that they're supposed to deliver for their average voter, not just for their donors. So, but let's talk about policy. How would you do that? What would you be in favor of that would improve the lives of those folks?
I remember this scene from our favorite show, The West Wing, where there's a dad who's taking his kid on a college tour, and he's stuck at a hotel bar with Toby and Josh, and he doesn't know how he's going to pay for it all. When it comes to sending your kids to school, by and large, it should just be a little bit easier to do that. And, that's one thing in terms of whether it's tax incentives to do that or finding some way to make college more affordable. The other thing is, we talk a lot about healthcare and whether Obamacare is, needs to be improved or whether we should have Medicare for all. But the bottom line is there are also a lot of families who do get their health insurance through their employers. But in this day and age, the deductibles are so high. The job that I just left, it was $3,000 a year or $6,000 a year, which basically makes families not have health insurance at all because so many families cannot afford that expense when they go to the doctor or for their prescription drugs. So in many ways, I feel it has to start there, and it has to start by solving that problem in terms of these health insurance companies that are making incredible billions of dollars. And it's not always the corporation's fault who hire people because they're being squeezed by the insurance companies. So it's two things, and it's many more. It's the insurance companies and also the fact that if there are any breaks out there, they have to go to the middle class and working families.
So Alan, this is a theme that's repeated over and over again, whether it's the insurance companies screwing over people with healthcare issues, or it's the NRA donating so much money to Republican politicians. And I mean, you're in Florida. This is Florida's 15th district. And unfortunately, Florida is legendary for mass shootings now. So I assume you're not taking NRA money, is that correct?
What do you think?
Okay, so that's obvious, right? But what would you do about gun control? How do you protect your citizens in a district like that?
Well, let's be clear what we're not talking about. We're not talking about taking anyone's guns away in terms of the guns that they buy for personal protection. We have a Second Amendment. I believe in it. I believe that if you feel that you need a weapon at home to protect yourself, that's one thing. But assault weapons, AR-15s, AK-47s with 100-round magazines, I mean, that is crazy. And the fact is, my wife and I have sat there and held our breaths every time we heard that there was a lockdown at our kids' school. And we would get a robocall. We actually had our daughter text us one day saying that she's sitting in the wrong seat because she was too close to the door of the classroom. And then if a shooter came in, she would be a target. Now, you tell me if your kid is going to get a good education, if that's what they're thinking about when they get into the classroom. So part of the issue is the way you talk to people about that you're not taking their guns away for personal protection. But when you're talking about weapons of war that should be in the hands of the US military, they simply should not be in the hands of civilians. And the fact is, you look at all the mass shootings, or many of the mass shootings that we've seen over the last several years, and there's debates about red flag laws, which is fine. There's, but you too often hear people say we don't want to deprive the rights of, law-abiding people to own these weapons. The fact is, they were law-abiding until they weren't, and this has gotten so crazy and so deadly and so horrible that it is insane. And we have to grow up. We have to grow up as a society, and that's where I would begin.
Yep. Alan Cohn running for Congress in a now winnable district. So this is a very important race if Democrats want to hold on to the House. The website is alancohnforcongress.com. We'll of course have the links down below if you're watching later on YouTube or Facebook. In the description box, you just click on them, find out more about Alan, and obviously the click for donations as well, going up against a lot of money from a lot of corporate interests. So Alan Cohn, thank you for joining us on the Young Turks. Appreciate it, brother.
Thanks a lot, Cenk.